It was a big circus at Dyess Air Force Base over this because they weren't supposed to send those out. And reportedly took the base commander giving the order. And by the way, if this hadn't happened, the base commander would come out and say I was a liar, wouldn't they? All I know is I have top sources that are missing nukes at Dyess Air Force Base. And then that day, Lindsey Graham starts talking about nukes blowing up South Carolina, and that's where the nukes were going. And then we see the 2 top nuke generals being removed.
Share this video with a friend.
Our high-level source said that there weren't supposed to be nuclear weapons a month ago, back on September 3rd, at Dyess. They pulled them out of secret mothballs, loaded them on trucks that weren't the normal trucks that move nukes around. There, of course, is the big private nuke base, the big nuke plant, the biggest in the U.S., is right outside of there. That's in all our articles. And then that night, Lindsey Graham comes out and says the East Coast, including South Carolina, is going to be nuked. Well, the nukes were reportedly going to Georgia and then on to South Carolina. And then we learned 2 weeks ago that that night, they relieved of command. This is hours after we broke it. That night, we have the head in the Navy of the nuclear system. Second command of country's nuclear arsenal is suspended. And now in the mainstream Daily Mail, Associated Press, you name it, they get into why they say he was suspended. And now we have another general, even more high level, over all the nuclear weapons in the United States, being relieved of command. Air Force general in charge of nukes has been fired. And the Obama administration doesn't even want this known, AP says. There's that article. And now he's been replaced by Major General Jack Weinstein. Okay, and then you've got the same individual that's removing all of them. Now, I don't know if this is connected to all that, but it looks like it is. This would normally be huge news if one general over nukes got removed, the number 2 guy. Now the number 1 guy, and then one person has been put over all of them. Major General Jack Weinstein. This individual looks pretty young to me. So there's a major shakeup going on. We know that's been going on in the brass.
And we start with a developing story, a shakeup at the highest levels of the U.S. military. A top general in charge of nuclear weapons fired, and this comes 48 hours after another top military commander was dismissed. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has been talking to her sources all day, has the very latest on what's happening right now. Martha.
Diane, these officers have some of the highest security clearances you can get and have been in charge of the nation's most sensitive nuclear arsenals. A stunning chain of events. Today, Michael Carey, the 2-star general responsible for the nation's 3 intercontinental ballistic missile wings, fired from his command. The reason? Personal misbehavior on a military business trip. This comes just 48 hours after President Obama himself relieved the number 2 in command over the nation's nuclear arsenal over his suspected use of counterfeit poker chips. These follow an alarming string of general officers losing their jobs this year for inappropriate behavior, misconduct, or lack of leadership. 2 Marine Corps generals fired less than 2 weeks ago for not providing proper force protection in Afghanistan. An Army brigadier general relieved of duty for adultery. An Army 2-star general fired for groping a civilian. And in March, a Navy 1-star removed for racially insensitive comments and abusive leadership.
Just recapping what's been one of the top stories for us since September 3rd last month. We've been reporting this, and if this isn't true, or if our source is wrong, we need the so-called dinosaur media to come out and show how we're wrong. We need the base to come out and deny this. We need the media to respond, but they won't. Just 6 years ago, It was a big deal when stuff like this went on. This is why I'm freaking out. Let's go to the CNN clip from 6 years ago with the last missing nukes so people understand what a big deal this is.
Let's tell people what we do know. It was last Thursday, a B-52 bomber loaded 6 air-launched cruise missiles under its wings, took off from Minot, North Dakota, flew the length of the United States to Barksdale, Louisiana. Those missiles were supposed to be decommissioned. There was just one little problem. When they landed in Louisiana, they found that those missiles that were supposed to be basically decommissioned and taken out of service, each of them had a nuclear warhead on them. 6 nuclear warheads flying the length of the United States, and no one seemed to know it. To say the least, a major investigation is underway now. The Air Force officer in charge of the squadron loading the munitions, relieved of duty. They took an immediate inventory of all Air Force nuclear weapons to make sure they had everything. They say the public was never in any danger. The weapons were not armed, that there would have been no nuclear detonation if in some fashion the missiles had basically fallen off the wings of the airplane. But really, small comfort to most of the military and to many Americans, perhaps. This sort of thing is not supposed to happen. Nuclear weapons are the most guarded, the most secure.
Yeah, that's right, because it wasn't an accident. We did major investigations. It was supposed to fly out from there to the Middle East. They were going to give the nukes to somebody. They were up to a false flag. Something big was going on. We know that from our sources. Now, here's a few minutes of what Michael Savage had to say about this on Friday and the new report about missing nukes. Here it is.
We're asking a simple question. Why has Obama purged the top nuclear commanders from our military? Vice Admiral Tim Giardina and Major General Michael Carey were thrown out over nothing. Now, there's only one site again that's talking about. It's the same site that talked about the killing of the unarmed black woman. So now they're purging the military. They're whacking people for no reason whatsoever. Top nuke commanders terminated following missing nuclear warheads report is the headline on prisonplanet.com. That's Alex Jones's website. He's the only one covering this. I just found it by Anthony Gucciardi. And here's what they say. 2 of the top nuclear commanders within the United States have now been terminated following the exclusive high-level military leak report by Alec Jones and myself regarding the secret and unsigned nuclear weapons transfer from Dyess Air Force Base to South Carolina. Disturbingly, the high-level suspensions from top generals within the military establishment are not the only red flags to follow the leak report. Even before it was announced that the second highest nuke commander in the U.S. was suspended on the same day of the secret nuke transfer just weeks later, it was Senator Lindsey Graham who went on record hours after our report in saying that a nuclear attack could come to South Carolina in the event that we did not move militarily against Syria and Iran, pushing even harder to action against both Iran and Syria.
Well, it was just 5 weeks ago that InfoWars broke the story of nukes being moved secretly at Dyess Air Force Base. Now, these were nukes that were not supposed to be there, and we were told that they were going to South Carolina. Later, we found out that Lindsey Graham was fear-mongering about terrorist attacks, nuclear terrorist attacks in Charleston, South Carolina, and we learned that the number 2 missile commander was dismissed on that same day. Now, when that happened, a retired Air Force General Eugene Habinger said, "I know of no other case ever of a deputy commander who was relieved for cause." Now, he was the commander from 1996 to 1998, and it was a nonsense charge. He's not been charged by local authorities. But then it got much stranger on Friday. The number 1 commander of missile commands, nuclear missiles, was dismissed. And no one else other than InfoWars and Michael Savage are interested in reporting this story. The crony media isn't interested in investigating anything about nukes being moved or even what appears to be an unprecedented purge of top-level nuclear commanders. And the fact that these firings were leaked in an email. And the email said that it was due to a lack of trust over a temporary assignment. This is a general who's in charge of all the nuclear commands. I wonder what kind of a temporary assignment he might have been on. Now, of course, it also is interesting to note that the general who relieved him of command had previously been in charge of space and cyberspace. Now, that would have obvious connections to the surveillance state. So the crony media is not interested in covering this, and I guess that is the real story.
But I said if it starts happening to more top nuke commanders, then you know there's some type of coup, counter coup going on. Boom. Just breaking 30 minutes ago. Huffington Post. We've got, here's the Huffington Post. Michael Carey, Air Force general in charge of nuclear missiles, to be fired over loss of trust by the White House. When you start hearing that the White House has a loss of trust over someone, I mean, what does that mean? This is crazy.
The reason Major General Michael Carey was fired was not because of operational readiness or inspection results or sexual misconduct. General Carey was in charge of all of the nuclear missiles at 3 bases across the country. Now, the Air Force said it lost trust and confidence in his leadership and judgment because of information from an Inspector General's investigation into his behavior. Lieutenant General James Kowalski is taking over Carey's command, which is based in Wyoming.
This is in the Associated Press, by the way. The Air Force is firing the 2-star general in charge of all of its nuclear missiles. All of the nuclear missiles. This other guy was over the cruise missiles and in the Navy and a bunch of other systems. Put that back up on screen for me. There's more out on the AP now. I only have the first report. The Air Force is firing its 2-star general in charge of all its nuclear missiles in response to an investigation into alleged personal misbehavior, officials told the Associated Press today. Major General Michael Carey is being removed from command of the 20th Air Force, which is responsible for 3 wings of international intercontinental ballistic missiles, a total of 450. All 3 bases across the country, the official said. The official disclosed the matter to the AP on condition of anonymity because it has not been publicly announced.
Now, the top nuke commander has been fired. What's going on?
2 separate top nuke commanders have been removed from command in the last month following our internal sources telling us that nukes were basically dug out of secret mothballs at Dyess Air Force Base in West Texas and disappeared onto the East Coast. Now, the number 2 commander of nuclear forces, an admiral, was removed a few weeks ago, and now the commander over all the forces, a Lieutenant General Carey, was removed today. But get this, the Associated Press leaked the information out to the rest of the press, and their reporters said that everyone's scared in government to even talk about the purge of generals that is going on right now. Normally it'd be big news, you'd know why. This is getting extremely. Now this new top general has been relieved, the number 1 commander, and we're going to tell you who he's been replaced by. That's really the big news here. Give folks the basics of why we're so concerned about this.
So this is why this is so concerning in a breaking news piece that we're still yet to fully decipher, but today's research, this is what we found. So not only has Lindsey Graham come out and said, yeah, if you don't go to war with Syria and actually Iran as well, South Carolina will be nuked. But that same day beforehand, we leaked the intel specifically stating that the nuclear warheads were moving from Texas to South Carolina. To add matters to that and make it even more extreme, not only, yes, do we have the 2nd commander being fired, but the 1st commander being fired, and it later came out through these leaked emails, if you look at the Daily Mail piece, that the 2nd in command was fired on the same day of the nuclear warheads transfer that we reported on. The exact same day, but that came out weeks later. So we couldn't have known that. The intel was right, 100%. We knew that, but we could not have even guessed that these guys would be laid off and fired and suspended and terminated until weeks later when they admit, yes, it happened on September 3rd, that day we reported it, but we didn't want anyone to know. Well, they said South Carolina specifically at the same point. Lindsey Graham said that there's a nuclear attack could happen.
Yes,
so,
and he said South Carolina or New York.
Yeah, so he said South Carolina, but it could go up into the New York area because it's a harbor, it's a big port, it's a big bay, it could go anywhere. But specifically, we knew South Carolina.
Yes.
That's what we knew. And then Lindsey Graham came out and said, yes, there could be an attack there. But what worries me the most, it's most concerning to me, that's the biggest point, is the Daily Mail piece where it says, yes, they didn't want to tell us about any of it, that we weren't supposed to really know. But then in the leaked section, it says, yeah, the email indicated that it actually happened on September 3rd. Again, that's the same day the nuke transfer actually was initiated. So these guys are being offed and terminated on the same day, and that the top guy, it turns out, he was terminated 2 days after another one.
Right now, a lot of attention is focused on the Obamacare standoff and the government shutdown. Was he briefed by David Petraeus and the CIA to suggest that there was a secret